Hello, my name is Katie Pottle, and I am a registered dental hygienist and a Master of Science in Dental Hygiene student at Eastern Washington University. I am also currently a student in Public Health 563, Research, Biostatistics, and Other Ways of Knowing. And although I currently live in Idaho, I have spent most of my life in the state of Wyoming. I received my Bachelor of Science in Dental Hygiene from the University of Wyoming. And I have a particular interest in smokeless tobacco use after being a clinical dental hygienist in the state of Wyoming. Leukoplakia, or the white cancerous patches that come from using smokeless tobacco, are almost considered a variation of normal in Wyoming. And to start, I'll cover some facts and statistics regarding smokeless tobacco use. Some health considerations provided from the CDC are: using smokeless tobacco may increase the risk for death from heart disease and stroke. Smokeless tobacco can cause white or gray patches inside the mouth, leukoplakia, that I was telling you about earlier, that can lead to cancer. Smokeless tobacco can cause gum disease, tooth decay, and eventually tooth loss, which is why it's a particular interest for me as a dental hygienist. And some smokeless tobacco use data, also from the CDC. In 2012, 3.6% of adults in the United States use smokeless tobacco. That's 3.6%. In 2012, 10.5% of young adult males, 18 to 25 years old, in the United States use smokeless tobacco. In 2013, 8.8% of adults in Wyoming use smokeless tobacco. This made Wyoming the second highest average in the United States, and also was 5.2% higher than the national average. So a significant problem. These numbers were obtained from a behavioral risk factor surveillance system, or phone surveys, completed by the CDC. And now that you know a little bit more background information regarding the issue, I'm interested in conducting a survey to learn more about why adults in Wyoming started using smokeless tobacco. The type of research I would like to do is a research study in cross-sectional design, a mail-in questionnaire. Participants will be randomly selected from the 2010 Wyoming Census information, and although I understand this will produce a lot of respondents that do not use smokeless tobacco, I thought this was the most ethically sound way to identify those who do use smokeless tobacco. 5% of the population will be mailed the questionnaire, which in Wyoming is roughly 30,000 people, and questions regarding participants' use of smokeless tobacco. This will identify those who do use smokeless tobacco, with 30,000 people and 8.8% of those hypothetically using smokeless tobacco, I should receive about 2,500 respondents that are smokeless tobacco users, so a significant size. And then, if participants indicate that they do use smokeless tobacco, questions regarding why they started using it will be included on the questionnaire. Now that you know more about my study, I'm going to talk about some of the ethical principles surrounding conducting this research. I'll be talking about ethical principles including autonomy, confidentiality, beneficence, non-maleficence, justice, veracity, and privacy. To start, autonomy is the capacity for self-governance, the ability to make reasonable decisions. Considerations for my research study include informed consent. Participants will be reassured that there will be no consequence for non-participation, and this will be included on the cover letter with the questionnaire. Also on that cover letter, participants will be fully informed on the intent of the survey and any potential harm that may come to them from participating. And then finally, voluntary participation will be stressed. They'll know that they only have to participate if they want to. The next principle is confidentiality, which is the obligation to keep some types of information confidential or secret. Considerations for my study include there'll be no information on identifying information on completed questionnaires. There'll be no name, no return address, nothing that can relate that questionnaire to that person. And then the mailing envelopes will be discreet. There'll be no indication of what is inside the envelope. The next principle is beneficence, which is the ethical obligation to do good and to avoid causing harm. Considerations for my study include the research results will be used to provide resources for anti-tobacco campaigns in Wyoming. This will benefit future generations of Wyoming. And then participants will receive a gift card for participation, less than a $5 value. And this will serve as a thank you for participating, but will induce minimal inducement. And then the next principle is non-maleficence, which is to do no harm. Considerations for my study include there'll be minimal risk of physical harm to any participant. There's minimal risk included from filling out a questionnaire. And then there'll be minimal risk of emotional harm to my participants. Smokeless tobacco isn't particularly a sensitive subject for most people, so I anticipate very low emotional harm from this. And then I will receive approval from the Eastern Washington University IRB before this research study will take place. And that's just to ensure that my research study is ethically sound. The next principle is justice, which is an ethical principle that obligates one to treat people fairly. In human subjects research, the principle of justice implies the subject should be selected equitably. Considerations for my study are that the participants will be randomly selected from the census data. My participants will be treated fairly and without discrimination. The fact that the return surveys have no means of identification on them helps to make sure that there's no discrimination in the results. The next principle is veracity, which is to tell the truth. Considerations for me include participants will be fully informed of the intent of the research and how the research study will take place. The study will focus on what I told participants it would focus on. For instance, if I did this questionnaire and told the participants that it was about why they started using smokeless tobacco, but I also included a couple questions about would they be willing to quit in the future, this wouldn't be ethically sound. Since I'm telling participants that the study is solely on why they started using smokeless tobacco, that's strictly what I'll focus my attention on. I won't ask them any questions that are outside the scope of the research. And then my research results will be available to the public, and the research study will not be corporately sponsored, and results will be represented honestly and with minimal bias. The research results will be published no matter what the outcome of the study is. Finally, privacy is the last principle, and it is a state of being free from unwanted intrusion into one's personal space, private information, or personal affairs. Considerations for me include that prior information about the participants' tobacco use will not be investigated. An example of this would be that I have access to health records in my profession. I can access many records indicating if a person is a smokeless tobacco user or not, but it would not be ethically sound for me to use these records for something other than they are intended for. Those records were intended to record the patient's health, not for me to go through and identify who I could use for a research participant. So I will not be obtaining information in that matter. And then also, if the survey is not returned within 2 weeks, I will send out one reminder letter to potential participants. And then after that, if it's unanswered, there'll be no further contact. I won't be hassling these individuals. Well, that is a little bit about my potential research study, why I'm interested in it, and how I would go about it in an ethically sound manner. If you have any questions, concerns, or comments for me, please don't hesitate to contact me. I included my contact information at the bottom of the handout that you received. So I just want to thank you for your time and your attention. Thank you very much.